What's going on, everybody? Today on the show, of course, you already know we're bringing nothing but awesome guests, people that can give you actionable steps, people that are doing this business, not just talking about it. Of course, we have another guest hailing out of Philly, currently the owner and founder of Wake Up Investments, which is currently helping entrepreneurs begin, sustain their journey. Obviously, it's a lot of a mental battle that you have to do in order to do this business or any business in which you're working for yourself. Today's guest, she also bought her first property right after college with her refund check. All right, so everybody that's getting their stimulus check where it's $1,200 and it was $24 for a family, if you got kids, you're stacking up these, a couple of $1,000. And what are you going to do with that? All right, today's guest used her school refund check to buy her first property. And ironically, before she decided to jump into real estate as a full-time professional, she was actually serving in a school, serving as a counselor in Pennsylvania. And for 1 year, she was also in DR, which ironically, considering the fact that she travels all over the world, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the agent, the landlord, the wholesaler, the licensed contractor. Yes, you heard that right. Stephanie Smith. Stephanie, and I promise you she's not related to me. Stephanie, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Austin.
Absolutely, absolutely. Of course, we will jump right into it. We kind of have an idea of how you got started, but where was the thought implanted? Where did this, because obviously you're coming from a school environment. Is that what you were majoring in as well, like education?
Yes, so I was a double major at Rosemont College in Pennsylvania as a psych major and an elementary education major, and then I continued my ed as a school counselor. So I have a master's of education in counselor education.
Gotcha. Okay. So where did that thought come from? Where did investing come from? Where did real estate come from? This isn't in an education area per se. So where did that come from?
So we always talk about multiple streams of income, and as an educator, you have many perks. You may not get paid the most, even though we make the doctors, we make the lawyers. However, you get your summers off, right?
Right.
So with that being said, pay-wise, it's always not the best. So you have to also think about how can you sustain the lifestyle that you actually want to sustain. So with that being said, I thought about real estate. And the reason what made me think about it, because I always told myself I never wanted to rent. I don't have anything against renting, but I just said for my mom's house, I wanted to go into a spot of my own. And my mom is always stressing, own your own, own your own. And she was very prideful. I seen when she paid off her house. So these things are like a big deal, especially within our community. So also growing up, I watched my mom rent a room or rent her basement out to someone in her home because I went to Catholic school, and by her being a single parent, she didn't make the most money. So she needed to do other things in order to give me the life that she wanted to give me. So I winded up taking a refund check with college, and come to find out, I really didn't need much of that refund check. I probably, how you talked about with the stimulus checks, you can get $1,200 if it's one person. If you get kids or, a second person, it's like $2,400. I actually didn't even need probably $2,000 to close on my property because there's grants out there, there's seller's assist that can be able to assist you, where typically you only need a deposit to hold your spot when you're filling out a contract and home inspections or any other type of inspections that you typically need. So I probably came to the table probably with like $1,000, $1,500 at the most to be able to own my first home. And I could have potentially got a credit back at that time as well, because I already had $15,000 in a grant from Wells Fargo to help me purchase my first house as well. And that was because I didn't own a home at the time, and Wells Fargo was giving out money to certain low income areas, in a sense, low economic areas.
Right. The one thing that you pointed out was, and I was kind of in the same similar situation where I was staying at home. I had finished college. I was still working, but still staying at home only because I just realized, especially in New Jersey, by the time that you get out, even if you're making, say $50,000 as far as, or at that point, right at the college, it was entry level. So it was maybe, $35,000 or $40,000. And, by the time that you even step foot out of, on rent, that's basically your entire check, at least when you're, thinking about making that transition. Yes, you can have roommates and things like that, but luckily I was blessed enough, and obviously we both, were blessed enough where our parents had no problem, to a certain extent, of us staying, for a period of time. So, but at the same time, I used that wisely. So while I was staying home, I was stacking up everything as much as possible. And then that afforded me to be able to quit my job and then go into business full time. Well, not have to worry about, paying bills right away or anything like that. Like I had a runway that if everything went bad for a year, I would still be straight, at least financially, while I continue to work and continue to build. So you already had kind of a backing or a synergy in the field of real estate where you were, watching your mom rent her spot out and, kind of taking that into account. When the things didn't kind of pan out for you on the education side, when did you know it was time to transfer over into being a real estate professional, full time? And then what skills or what did the education sector prepare you for in order for you to hit the ground running as the real estate professional?
So it was in 2017. I had a 2-year contract and I wasn't renewed to come back to the school for the second school year. It was a different demographic than what I was kind of used to. So I really like to work with at-risk children. And in the Dominican Republic, sometimes in international schools, they're not more so, I'm just going to say, at risk in a sense, like in some of the inner cities where there's a lot of struggles. Now, all classes, all demographics, they have their own separate struggles, but it definitely was a private school and a more privileged student. So the demographic probably just didn't fit for me, and I still loved and cared for all my students as I would any student, but there was some disconnect. And so with that being said, when I came back home, I was like, I have a couple properties at the time. I'm okay. I'm not rich. I mean, I could live off probably $1,000 a month if I really wanted to, because I'm not shopping all the time. My shopping was traveling. And so when I came home, I said, okay, I'm going to, I told myself I was going to get a job at the airport because I wanted to go back and forth to DR to visit, the relationships that I had there. So I got a job at the airport, and I just said I was just going to travel for 1 year. And that 1 year, I wound up just going back and forth to DR. I didn't even travel like really anywhere else. And so I said, okay.
You just commuted.
Yeah, back and forth to DR. I gave up the job at the airport and, just had a little connection there. And so from there, I just said, let me travel now for the second year and let me get into some real estate. Let me learn a little bit more about it, because when I got into my first property that wound up being an investment property, I didn't really know that I was an investor until 2018. And I bought my first property in 2013. I just started to buy properties, and by 2018, I had 4 houses. And I didn't consider myself an investor. I just consider myself a person buying houses because I needed that extra stream of income if I did decide to go back into being a school counselor. So with that being said, my transition turned when I started to join different real estate groups here in Philadelphia, join different webinars, and started to actually really put myself out there and learn, hey, I am an investor. Now, how can I go ahead and scale my business up, or to make what I have a business? Because I winded up starting my LLC in 2018. So prior to that, I wasn't thinking like business savvy. I was just thinking more like just a person that just wanted some rental income.
More? Yeah. How do we just buy more? Like, I don't get the whole intricacies. Just how do I go from what I'm doing just on like a more massive scale?
Yeah. So 2018 was my time to actually really sit down and start to structure, what is it that I'm doing? Okay, this is a business. Now, can I make this a true business and scale up and actually sustain a lifestyle on my own, working for myself, not working for anyone else, and still be able to incorporate that educational component
Mm,
to other people, as well as I still go into schools for career days. And that's my way of kind of giving back a little bit on that, not academic, but that more career and college readiness
mm,
aspect to students, because now I'm speaking to them about a real life experience, a field, and showing them from the school to actually real life.
And that makes sense because now you're offering, courses and opportunities for people to learn and tap into your particular strategies, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
I do that as
Yeah,
I
where
do
can
that
people
as
find that
well.
at?
Yes. So www.wakeupinvestments.com. I have done courses where I do sell playbacks, and I also give out contracts and a booklet that I created in regards to wholesaling. So I do that. It's not something that I super promote
Right.
as much, but if anyone wants to DM me, they can always DM me on Instagram at My Life is Real Estate.
Beautiful. So perfect segue. Let's talk about wholesaling. It's one of those things. I just actually had somebody reach out to me. I think that was yesterday, and she was asking me about wholesaling and getting into the business and things like that. And obviously, it's one of those things where you probably saw an ad while you were watching a video, and then somebody popped on the screen talking about how they made $30,000 or whatever the case via wholesaling, just flipping paper, not flipping the house, no cash or credit, things like that. So obviously, it's very, very attractive because it's a very low barrier to entry. It's the same thing, same exact thing with being a real estate agent. The only difference is that you have to take a test for being a real estate agent, and wholesale you can just start just immediately, so no problem. Um, Wholesaling 101, let's break that down for the listeners that don't know exactly what wholesaling is. What is wholesaling and how? Actually, we'll answer that first, and just talk about some of the things that you're doing in the area as far as wholesaling.
So my class that I teach is called Selling a Piece of Paper for Thousands. That's
How was
exactly
that?
what
Okay, so I
wholesaling.
thought that was
That's
that.
exactly what wholesaling is. Wholesaling is you are selling a piece of paper. You're selling a AB contract to an end buyer, and you're making a profit. You do not sell houses. You are not a licensed agent. You are a wholesaler. So you never want to construe what you are doing for something else legally. So you sell a contract, a piece of paper, and that piece of paper can make you thousands.
Okay. What and just break down just kind of what you're doing just in the area as far as wholesaling,
Yeah.
or we'll talk about this, right? Because one of the biggest thing wholesaling is finding deals,
Mm-hmm.
and then most people, are finding buyers.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually like, okay, well, I'm going to get my buyers list up in X, Y, and Z. And as you would tell them, as pretty much every investor would tell them, it wouldn't matter if you had a buyer's list of 20,000 people if you had nothing that they can actually buy.
Mm-hmm.
So focus on actually finding a deal. That's what your 20% activity, that's what you get paid to do, is finding those opportunities. So
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie, $1 million question, the secret sauce, which there is no secret except for just work, but secret sauce, what are you doing in your market to find deals to wholesale?
Okay. So I want to give you some feedback to what you said
Mm-hmm.
really fast before I get into that question. So ask me that question probably in like 2 seconds because
Yep.
I forget sometimes. So I want to answer your question. Well, I want to piggyback on what you were saying. I actually am the opposite. I tell people gather your buyers.
Okay.
Gather your buyers is because when I started out wholesaling, once again, when I started out as a landlord, I didn't consider myself an investor. And that was the same thing with wholesaling. I didn't consider myself a wholesaler. And in my first year, my team did 6 figures. So
Mm.
I think I'm just now considering myself a wholesaler in 2020.
You're doing something. We'll just call it something. Like, you're doing something. Whatever it is, just do something.
But
You got an
so
industry in something.
So why I say it's important to have a buyer's list, because then those are the people that have the money. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can JV a deal all day as long as you got a buyer, a solid buyer.
Right.
So how I first started out was I was JVing deals. I'm not a lead generator. I hate lead generations. In my business, I am dispositions. I'm not acquisitions. So what that basically, acquisitions, for those of you who do not
Interesting.
know, are persons who actually are lead generators. So they're the ones who are structuring their team to find the deal, to skip trace, to cold call, and then or text message owners, and then from there they're getting it under contract. Dispositions is more me. I'm like an administrative type person. I like to make sure the contracts are tight. I like to know that we have an end buyer that's solid, that's going to buy the property. I like to work with the title company. So I like dispositions. All those who are in the acquisition side, more kudos to them, because they're doing a lot of work too to find that deal and to negotiate to get it down to a right price. So do I do acquisitions? Yes, within my business. However, that's not my main source. And I tell my acquisitions manager, I'll help you, but this is all you right here. I am dispositions. But in order for us to be more successful in what we're doing, since I have a new partner, I do have to help out with some of the lead stuff to make sure that we are starting to be on track, because I did have a system last year prior. So I do say that for those of you who are new wholesalers, maybe you're not the best at cold calling, but you don't have a lot of money, so you can't pay for a VA. What I would recommend is that you go ahead and get your buyers list. And when you're on Facebook or when you're on Zillow or you're on one of those websites that you see are for sale by owner and it's the actual owner, go ahead and get your end buyer lined up, because it will be easier for you to close that deal and find a title company that will work with you. So JVing for me is very simple, very easy. I like to JV, and I just like to bring the buyers to the table.
That's a pretty interesting aspect, and you really are, kudos to you for running it actually like a business, where some people are independent, where they're managing the acquisitions, the getting it under contract, the locating the end buyer, matching A to B, contracts, or A to C, and depending on how you're closing, whether you're double closing, whether you're just doing an assignment, however the case, coordinating visits to the property, coordinating, closing, and there's a lot of steps in the actual wholesale process. So if you were to map it out from start to finish, there's an X amount of steps, and you need a role or somebody to do each and one of those steps. And what I like about that particular aspect is that you remove yourself from all the aspects and just focused on the aspect that you do best, which is matching up that hot contract. So the contract's already hot in your hand, and then you're just matching the end buyer with it, which is solid, at least when you're growing a team. And to your point, that's a very good point, where, again, what you don't want to do is, as well, is find yourself in a situation where you have the deal, and then now all of a sudden, with your deposit money on the line or whatever the case, if there's no deposit, however you structure it, now you don't have anybody to offload it to, and now you're spending more time trying to find a buyer than already having somebody in place where you could take that hot contract and just pass it off. So that's pretty interesting, because then you also answered my question of whether or not that was somebody on your team that was the acquisition managers and being responsible for acquisitions, which you did explain that it is.
So I have a relationship with someone where they bring in acquisitions and they want me to close their deals, so we partner up that way. But I do work with other people separately as well, where there's no bonding if they do bring me a lead and things like that, where I filter it into my system with that person. So I still keep myself open if other people bring me deals. But like I tell anybody that's new, the best thing sometimes is to not try to do everything on your own. See where you can add value and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses to other people. And when I first started out, I was probably a little greedy, because in my mind I said, I want that 10,000, I want that 20,000. But why not split that with somebody and we get more deals done? And we could have more deals in the pipeline. So when I first started out, I did my first deal on my own. But other than that, I was working with somebody for a couple other deals. Then I did a couple on my own too. But like I said, mainly they would come from JVing. They would come from me looking on Facebook, Craigslist before it becomes saturated with wholesalers. It would be, waking up, in the morning and, seeing what deals were out there. So I would just say for newbies, see, if you can partner up with somebody, partner up. If you can hire a virtual assistant, pay them $3, $4, $5, whatever dollars you want to pay them an hour. I pay mine $6 an hour. find somebody to cold call if that's not your weakness. I mean, if that's not your strength, it is a weakness of mine. I wear too many hats to be sitting at the, computer cold calling or the phone cold calling. So
That's such a gold point that unless you are working for yourself or working within the business, do you understand like exactly what was said? Because the only thing and the most important thing is the saved time. And I'm going through it right now where it's like I'm trying to do a little bit more because there's bigger checks that are involved with that and more checks that are involved with that. That's cool. However, realistically, and thinking about, so for example, if you personally, Stephanie, can do, 10 deals a month at 10,000, at $10,000 a pop, it's like, yes, you will be able, $100,000 a month. Who wouldn't want that? No problem. It's not until you actually hit that, because it's always looks like, it's always the level until you reach that level. And then once you reach that level, your mindset is already on how can I do $200,000 a month, or how can I do $20,000 a month. And the biggest thing that I'm working on this year is bringing people on and working with other people, because yes, to your point, I would much rather at this point, and as we get older and as much as time becomes more and
yeah.
more important to us, it's like
Mhm.
I would rather make the $5,000 and putting an hour's worth of work rather than taking 3 weeks and making the $10,000. So to
Mhm.
your point, partnering with somebody or finding out or just mapping out your process from start to finish
Mhm.
and finding
Yeah.
out who you're going to plug in at certain points. Even if even if it takes a bunch of your quote unquote commission, it's all about the
Mhm.
efficiency. So if you can make $1,000
That's
in 30 minutes versus, again, the same 10,000, over 24 hours, it becomes an efficiency thing. And that's something that I'm kind of learning now that I realize that once you hit a certain plateau and you're trying to get to the next plateau, you realize that there's
mhm.
no possible way that you can do it all by yourself. And yeah, I'm still in that little bit of that greedy phase, so I'm working on that. So we'll see what happens. It is what it is.
Work in
Oh,
progress.
all good. It's all good. It is what it is. So cool. Let's talk about what are you noticing just in the market when it comes down to investors, wholesalers, just deals being done during this whole COVID pandemic? Do you think the market's going to crash? Do you think it's going to be as worse as what people think it's going to be, or is it all in our heads?
We continue to be on lockdown. I think that it's definitely going to take a hit. I don't think that, sadly, I don't think that a lot of businesses should have been impacted in 2 weeks, like
Mm-hmm.
2 months, if they would
Mm-hmm.
have plans or had certain things in place. But then once again, within real estate, a lot of people a lot of people that are landlords aren't recession proof landlords. I'm not going to say that I discriminate, but most of my tenants are Section 8 tenants. It's more so recession proof than maybe if you did have somebody that was working and then they lost their job. So sometimes I think that I'm in a business, like for me, I know that I like to help people that I came from an educational background. So I like affordable housing. It's guaranteed money, but I also have stories where one of my houses, I can get about $1,500 a month, and I literally only get $1,080 a month because I took a lady out the shelter. So not only am I helping those that do need help, but also Section 8 is recession proof. Other different forms of real estate that are asset businesses are like assisted living. So I was working on before the pandemic to be a resource for persons with intellectual disabilities. So that's
Mm.
something that if I get into that realm and that field, which I'm supposed to go to I passed all the state modules, but now I have to go to the in-person orientation, which is in June if it doesn't get canceled. But that's something that is another stream of income where it is kind of recession proof because these persons will always get paid by the government and you're helping them, but then you're also solidifying, another source of more so guaranteed income. I have always questioned when the government shut down, was Section 8 ever shut down? Because I mean, it is a government, resource. When we did have our, not a recession, the shutdown, like, months back and everything like that,
Right.
it didn't shut down. But you can never say never. So you always want to still have, like, you want to think about streams of income that also can potentially be recession proof. I think that for me also with real estate, how I was impacted by the pandemic was more so just my construction sites, because the inspectors could not come out.
Right.
In Philadelphia, our permit system was new. It just came out, launched in March. So no one really got training. And so permits are just being submitted and no one's approving them really at this time. So that's one way how I was affected. But I have an Airbnb, and most Airbnbs were infected, but my Airbnb wasn't, because it's an 8-bedroom house. And with it being an 8-bedroom house, I go by the room and not by the entire house. So I already had marketed to long-term stays. So some of my rooms had long-term Airbnb guests, and they all, go through the platform. However, they extended their stay, especially during this time, because they couldn't go home. I had one couple who luckily they got out of here before they shut the borders, but they were from Italy and they were looking to stay for a month and a half. And I was like, I don't think y'all want to go home right now. You don't see these numbers, but they went home. Hopefully they're okay. But definitely, it's been impacted. I've denied persons. Unfortunately, there were some frontliners that did want to stay at my place, but I couldn't allow that because it is shared common spaces. So unfortunately, I had to recommend to them that they do entire places, just because when they come home, they need to strip down. They need to be able to clean themselves properly with what they're wearing every day when they're interacting with persons. So my places are cheaper, and so people want to stay because it's by the room. So it's like $20, $30 a night or $35 a night, opposed to that $60, $70, $80, $100 a night. But I did have to protect the guests that were already there, that were working from home, that have been long-term stays. But my Section 8 tenants, not affected. Even the portion that they had to pay, some of them, they like work at Walmart. Walmart's open, so they can still get paid. One of my rooming houses, they basically are tractor trailer drivers. They're still on the road. So definitely haven't been impacted as some. And it really just it really just helped me to be able to think about what recession-proof assets within real estate can I continue to learn about and go into that will help me if we have another pandemic or if we have a market crash. What can I learn throughout this time and see what other people are doing within their business that are flourishing and that aren't struggling to be able to stay sustainable during these times.
Yeah, I love it. And I kind of have similar sentiments where, I don't think it'll be a crash. I mean, we'll see what happens. I won't think that it'll be a crash until the individuals that are in, say, corporate America, where they just had to make the transition and just working from home. If that tier, if that peg, if that, chair gets the leg snapped under that, that's when I think that we'll really start to see, just a major shift. And, I still feel the same way with like the high end, like luxury rentals, where if anybody's that's been affected, anything luxury, most people that are paying for luxury stuff can't afford it to begin with. That's why it's a luxury, right? It's a luxury for a reason, not a necessity. So the individuals that are in that particular playing field, if they found themselves with a job adjustment or income adjustment in that point, they're usually the first ones to adjust their lifestyles to the back where they belong and I don't want to say back where they belong in the middle class, but back where their budget matches their actual income. So that's why we, like to buy properties in area where for the individuals that maybe are in the D-class neighborhoods, they're looking to move them way, make their way up, but they can't get into the awesome suburbs or the, predominantly white neighborhoods or anything like that. So we're like right in the nestle where we're still in a city that has those D and C areas, but on the border of those B and A areas. So that
Mhm.
way it's kind of a middle point where the people that are, maybe grew up in extreme poverty and finally got themselves stabilized, they're looking to move their family up and out of the nonsense. And then at the same
Mhm.
time, for the people that maybe gotten way above their heads and need to have an adjustment, can now come back into
Mhm.
that area and kind of stabilize. So,
Mhm.
but the one thing that I have to tap into definitely is Section 8. Luckily, we've been blessed that, everybody that, is our tenants, currently 6 units. Everybody's paid. We've had, luckily we've had no issues. Knock on wood. Hopefully it stays that way. But
Knock
but
knock.
oh yeah, a buddy of mine who is one of my clients. His properties were Section 8, and I haven't seen one trickle of sweat during this whole entire pandemic. His only concern was just like you, was like, but ironically, we were buying during that period that you were mentioning, where the government has shut
Mhm.
down because they couldn't come to an agreement on I forgot exactly what it was. They couldn't come to, or the bill, they couldn't come to agreement on the budget for America, and the government shut down, and we were wondering, like, is Section 8 still going to get paid and everything like that? And they were still cutting checks. So, he was less
Mhm.
worried. This was probably a more of a concern because, we were actually shutting down. But
Mhm.
his checks are coming, like clockwork, as they normally would, and as they should. Um, you threw out the Airbnb, which I was going to bring up later, but kind of as
Mhm.
we kind of start our descent here, I wanted to go into we'll break it down, and I'll remind you just how I answer these how I ask these questions. But number one, are you strictly, well, obviously you're not strictly doing wholesaling. You also own landlording and things like that. Question number one, as a licensed contractor,
Mhm.
right? Because the
Mhm.
reality is, most individuals won't find a female licensed contractor. I'll unpack it a little bit more, and no, a lot of
Mhm.
people won't find a black female licensed contractor. So, talk about that and the benefits of having your contractor's license.
Because I'm a control freak,
There you
period.
go. There you go.
I like to run my projects the way I like to run them. And if persons aren't making deadlines when they need to consistently, then it becomes a problem. So, with that being said, I'm able to pull permits and I'm able to run the project the way I like it to be ran. I have decided for one of my projects that I did hire, and I'm testing out another general contractor so that I don't have to be there in a sense.
Yep.
So he's still a licensed general contractor, but we still communicate. I'm not going to say he's like a project manager because I wouldn't want to undermine him, but that's what I was kind of looking for. I was looking for somebody that we can still have good communication. He kind of gets a feel for what it is that I'm looking for, but I don't have to be at my project every day. Or he
Mm.
has his guys that he can bring in. So for one of my projects, I have 2 or 3 going on right now. He's running one of them, and I'm testing him out. He's doing well for the most part, so I'm satisfied. So being a licensed contractor, that's it. I wanted to be able to control my project, and if something goes wrong, I wanted to be able to step in. And if I'm just the owner, but not the actual general contractor, sometimes it's kind of hard still to be able to talk to inspectors the way that you want to or need to,
Mm.
because you're just an owner and they need someone that has the credentials behind them to be able for them to actually take you seriously, maybe
Mm-hmm,
in a
mm-hmm.
sense, or so that you could be able to relate to certain things. So it benefits me tremendously, because if I do have an issue with a permit, I can go ahead and pull it. I can talk to license and inspections.
Mm, mm.
So I like it.
Do you see any major or drastic change when it just comes down to budgeting and numbers and being able to save on cost and things like
Yeah.
that?
Yes, because as a contractor, some stores do give you contractor prices.
Mm,
So you can set up accounts. It's another business. So you can go ahead and you can create business accounts underneath that business.
mm,
Also, being a contractor helps you to understand budget, because now you're working directly with your subs. So my subs could be my plumbers, my electricians, my HVAC crew, or even my finishers. So you get to kind of learn more hands-on how to do certain things, even if I wanted to do things myself, whether it's change a faucet, install a toilet. You start to learn some of these things too with being in the realm, being in the field, as well as safety things that I never thought of.
Mm.
So that's one of the big things with getting your OSHA 30 is that, and being a contractor, we just think, oh, we're fixing things. But what about the safety, the health and safety, person's wellness that goes into play? What's the importance of wearing a mask? You can go on the site and not wear a mask, but now what's the importance of wearing a mask? Because, hey, there may be something in the air that can be hazardous to your health. It could be mold, or, you need certain fall protection if you're going to be doing scaffolding at your home. Because I do have a really large home that needed scaffolding done at the time. How do they strap themselves in so that if they fall, that they're not falling to the ground and cracking their head open? So you learn about all these different protections when you go to the classes, when you learn from other people as well, hands-on experiences. So this helps persons that want to get into the fix and flip side of things. It helps them to be able to understand their numbers, to be able to understand how to manage a site, and to be able to understand the safety and wellness of the persons who are working on the site.
Love it. Love it. All right. Awesome. So are you still, so that was question number one.
Mm-hmm.
Question number two of this last segment was, your Airbnb. Are you, heavy pro Airbnb, or, more of the residential Section 8 regular tenant style? What's your particular preference, or what made you, go after Airbnb?
I'm not a big fan of Airbnb.
Neither am I.
I got a little,
but yeah, it's weird.
I got in a little trouble with a rooming house situation.
Gotcha.
So it was better to do, things the right way with an Airbnb. So and using that platform, so I was still able to kind of profit what I was profiting prior. So I just chose Airbnb to get me by right now until hopefully things will go through maybe in the next year with the working with persons with intellectual disabilities. So maybe I can use that as a home, but I still have to in the future think about zoning and things like that for this particular home.
Okay, so that's interesting. That's kind of not a planned business model, but just something that because great Airbnb is a great way as I don't want to say placeholder, but for example, here in New Jersey, sometimes we have bonus units or bonus apartments that may or may not need necessarily quote unquote legal. People will rent them out all the time. There's no it's just common as texting and driving.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, and people ask me just as a professional, what's the side effects if I'm going about it this way? So the professional, side of it is just like, listen, like obviously if you were to go to court or anything like that, the judge can rule inside in favor of the tenant. Obviously, if you're picking a family member or somebody that you really, really trust, or, fraternity brother, fraternity sister, organization member or something like that, you probably won't have that problem, but it's something to think about at least when you're assessing the risk. But God forbid, if you ever had any type of malicious thoughts or anything that negative thoughts towards it, worst comes to worst, put it on an Airbnb, and at the end of the day, have them pay through Airbnb. I've never once have heard anybody going to landlord-tenant court when they are a resident of Airbnb. Or I don't think I've ever heard of anybody not checking out of a hotel. That would be the first one. Like I don't think I've ever, I'm pretty sure there's definitely some case where.
And they pay occupancy taxes and stuff. So you always have that argument because when you're renting, they're not paying occupancy taxes and stuff. So with Airbnb, they pay certain taxes that are geared towards like what hotels pay in a sense when people are staying at hotels. So yeah, I've had issues with my Airbnb, but I mean, I get suited and booted.
Are you the owner taking on that expense, like the occupancy tax?
No, the Airbnb guests take that on, so they pay things like that. So that
just as far as like the regular fees that when
you
check
so they pay service fees, occupancy taxes, like hotel taxes in a sense. So with that being said, I mean, I've had a couple instances where people were like, "Oh, I'm not going nowhere till you give me a refund." Oh, okay, I'm about to get suited and booted and come over there.
Wow.
And then the cops come as well, and I'll be like, "Y'all make sure y'all take care of this." So I tell the cops too. And I mean, I haven't had no issues. They done gotten right out with no refund.
There we go. And we don't have to worry about,
They see
attorney
nice
fee.
Stephanie turn into something else. They see school Stephanie turn into something else.
Oh, she real. I thought she was just a teacher. Oh, good. Because Airbnb is just one of those things. If it didn't, now it's getting a lot of the, I don't know, it's not the backlash, but people are just now starting to see how it can be, of a hassle. So they're going into it a little bit more smarter and just crossing T's and dotting I's a little bit more than in the past. A lot of people kind of in the past was, let's go get a shore house, or let's go get a nice, let's go buy a nice house by the beach, and then we'll just rent it out. You know what I mean? And there's your Airbnb business, quote unquote. And I know a lot of people are starting to get a little bit more um, cognizant of exactly what it is to be profitable longevity wise, and not having to worry about some of the things that do come with Airbnb. Last question before we go into the core four is, what's next for you. I also want you to tap into just We Heart Vacations, because I know this is not a travel podcast, but this is a real estate and lifestyle podcast. And one of the things that I know I got into real estate for, and what my wife kind of double down on, was that we're using our properties to be able to free up time for us to go travel. And I know when just eliminating our living expense in general, at that 1 year, or that year, I want to say we did the most traveling that we've ever done, while it did not affect the pockets where you almost felt kind of guilty that you would be able to have this autonomy while you still checking your bank account, and you're still have the ability to adhere to the same eating out budget that you did at home, or the same shopping or whatever monthly budget that you have yourself set on. You're gonna abide by the same budget and not feel strapped or anything like that. Adding to the fact that we use our credit cards for points, and us doing a normal budget, but you getting free flights, or 80,000 points or 60,000 points here, which you now use for your vacation. We're going on these trips for virtually free, and we wind up spending a couple $100 while we're out there, split between two people. It's easy, you know what I mean? And then as far as our rental income, we don't touch our rental income on a monthly basis, meaning if we're pulling in X amount of dollars per month, we're not touching that. All that is pretty much getting stacked. And it's just to the point where if we want to, the beauty of it is that if we want to dip out somewhere, or whatever the case, we can go take $1,000, take $2,000, go somewhere if we really wanted to, and it still wouldn't be equivalent to us dipping into our monthly income that comes from our rental properties. That's just extra fun money. But then we obviously are mindful to keep things in there for repairs, considering the fact that we just changed the hot water heater, and it's just easy just to Cash App, here you go, do what you got to do, because I don't know how to change a hot water heater, but just the ability to go on vacation, and again, that's even if we use the tenant's profit. We might just use our own, but it's just there if we need to, or it just gives you some another bucket that you can touch if you wanted to. And then if God forbid something happens, like a hot water heater comes out, or some major repair needs to be done, the fact that we're able to just Cash App that right to the contractor, or right to the handyman, or whoever's working on the project so easily, it's just and it's it just attests to the fact that just eliminating your living expense to start can do numbers. Now, obviously, we've added income on top of that. And the property that we're under contract right now will add another, $1,000 to $1,400. But yeah, you just see, it's shocking that we were missing out on this, for all this time. So now we're trying to play catch up. So I'm trying to retire at least by 35. So we'll see what happens. But that'll definitely happen. Yeah,
All
that'll
right.
definitely happen. But
So,
I don't want to mix retirement with balling out or whatever case. It's just no, I don't have to work, but I just like putting deals together at this point. But let's talk about, what's next for you, and the We Heart Vacations, because you're also the owner of that. So let's talk about that.
So, what's next for me is during this pandemic, I have taken on 2 more contracts to purchase 2 more properties. And what's special about well, I have 3 under contract, but too that will close faster. And what's special about these two projects are that they're both in separate states, and they're my first properties that are out of state. So they're still close to home.
Are you
They're
wholesaling these, or are these
no
like your personal invest? Okay, so you
personal.
holding it.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's
I'm looking to flip one and I'm looking to hold another. So I'm really excited about that because
that's
it's
big.
different. They're both out of state. One is in New Jersey and actually the other one is in Delaware. So super excited about those two deals that came along, and I look forward to closing on them. So that's what next for me. I'm looking more so out of state for properties now and still close to home, but maybe in other counties because I still am looking for cash flow properties. So I'm still buying during this time. You just have to make sure that you buy right during this time. Also, with We Heart Vacations, when I first in 2017, 2018, when I came home from DR, I was thinking about multiple streams of income and I like to travel. So I said, why not? I always travel by myself. Why not be able to start a platform where others can travel as well? So I became a travel agent, and then I specifically realized that individual travel wasn't for me. I like more group travel. So I used We Heart Vacations, hence we like plural. Vacations. We love vacation. Let's all link up. Let's get together. So I did a couple group trips. I did Essence Festival. I did Thailand. I did Belize. So I was able to bring other persons together to be able to do what they love as well.
That's
It
awesome.
was great, but then in 2019, I gave up actually doing group travel for just a little while so that I can focus more on real estate
Right.
and focus more on the hats that I wear within real estate because they do say riches are in the niches. So I wanted to be able to focus more on real estate. I do still keep up my We Heart Vacations page, and I do post daily on things regarding travel tips, regarding different places all around the world, fun facts. So I do keep up with that, and I will start back with group travel, but I just don't have a specific date. I do have people requesting that I plan something to South Africa, and
There
I'm
we
like, oh,
go.
that
Do the
sounds
Cape Town.
fun. Yeah, so it sounds fun. So I definitely want to do something in the future, but I don't think I'll do it prior to maybe 2020, 2022. Sorry, 2022.
Or if you would have just put somebody in place and then you can just run their system and then you do what you do.
True,
But I get you now. Um,
true.
that's a really big point though, as far as like investing out of state, because where we're at, and you're down in Philly, which for us we're like, man, Philly's cheap. Like we need to go down to Philly,
Mm-hmm.
and so we're in a in the market where a renovated multifamily can easily be 400,000 say,
Mm-hmm.
so with no problem, and that's average, so it can definitely be the highest they easily can be 550 with no problem. But so we look at other areas, other demographics where
Mm-hmm.
ideally we would like to be all in at a lower number. So that has us looking at kind of the southern states, Philly, South Jersey, like Camden. Where's the city for New Jersey that you're investing in?
It's in New Jersey. That's all we need to know right now.
We'll take it, right? So
It's
no
in
one's
South
gonna,
Jersey.
yeah, because it ain't in North Jersey. It can't be North Jersey because no one's coming
No,
from Philly to come to North
it's
Jersey.
a really good deal.
I got you. That's all yours. We won't steal that. That's all yours. But nobody, to my point, no one's coming, like, no one's even feeling to come to North Jersey or like a more expensive market. Like, I'm not
No, no one wants the property taxes there. This house is only
saying,
$4,500 a year, which is really cheap for
oh my
Jersey.
goodness. So we're screwed off the beginning because we're number one in the country when it comes down to property taxes. So the rip, like when people are asking and they're trying to, and they're trying to do like the hard deals. I never forget, what's her name? Um, Cousin Nita, I think, Cousin Nita over in Ohio or Cleveland.
Ohio.
And she brought this post, and it was so true about how some of us, we try to do the most difficult deal. So people that are in New Jersey, at least in my particular area, we're trying to do like a subject to, hard money, but you're bringing in private money to find the down payment. And like you have like, it's a whole web trying to take down this deal. It's like you might as well have just gone down to a cheaper neighborhood, put down 20%.
Mm-hmm.
We hate the word 20%, right? Because it just means, or quote unquote, it's just more cash.
Mm-hmm.
But you could have done the same deal in a much cheaper neighborhood without all the other extra stuff, and you would have got through it much easier.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people, are struggling with that, rightfully so. So we look into other areas, but for you pulling the triggers on those first deals out of state, that's major, because I think once you get into the game of not being there, I don't know if you saw those properties or things like that, but
I've seen them.
okay. So once you get into the game where you don't have to see them and things like that, is when you're really able to just focus on the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that's the reality. Like your money can go just a lot farther in certain
Mm-hmm.
areas. So I would never leave, New Jersey to go invest in LA. That's just not. I'm going backwards.
Got you.
But yeah, so kudos to you. So here we
Thank
go.
you.
The last segment of the show, the core four, which are the 4 questions that I ask each and every guest on the Austin Smith Real Estate Podcast. Question number 1: what is your favorite aspect about real estate?
Being a landlord.
Being a landlord. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I love being a landlord because I love being able to help persons get into affordable homes that are in good living conditions, that they don't have a slumlord, and that they can hopefully sleep safe at night and comfortable.
Beautiful. Question number 2: favorite business or personal development book? And obviously it can't be yours.
I like a book called How Can I Win? It's by a Jamaican author. Her name is Simone Blair Walker.
How
So
can
it's
I
called,
win?
yes.
I tell every guest I use these questions also kind of selfishly as well, because then it just adds to the book list here. And How to Win. I haven't heard
How
that
can I,
before.
how can I win?
Oh, How Can I Win? I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
How Can I Win? And it's by
Simone?
Blair Walker.
Yes.
Here we go. Beautiful. Added to the cart.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, that's the only question that always takes a long time, because I always wind up just adding it to the adding it straight to my cart, and we'll be good to go. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to do it, because if not, I'm going to forget. Add it. Boom. All good. Question number 3. Sorry to all the listeners. I know I'm selfish, but I do it for y'all. That's why. Question number 3: when you're not out doing deals, you're not out putting things together, if you're even in this side of the hemisphere, when you're not traveling, what are the fun things that you like to do in your spare time? And I know, and I guess can know already, that traveling is one of them. But what are the other things that you like to do in your spare time?
Taking time out for myself. So maybe getting a massage or watching TV. So just taking time out for myself, I think is very important, especially when I'm in the field that I am in, that I do things to relieve stress that may go on. So just try to live a stress-free life. I tried meditating, but so many things go on in my mind all the time that I'm like, I can't be in the present. So I'm in like the past and the future. And, so I tried meditating. It hasn't really worked. Exercising. So I was doing kickboxing. That was pretty cool. I've done different forms of martial arts. But recently, before the pandemic, I was starting kickboxing. So that was cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of meditation, but it's a practice. So it's
Definitely.
some days but the cool part about it is that it's just accepting that, like, so some days, mine will be racing, and then it's in the past, it's in the present, just like you said, and then you can't concentrate. And the whole theory about, I guess meditation in general is just like, that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
be in the present of just knowing, like, your shit, like your mind, mental is just all over the place, and just like looking at
Yeah.
everything, or like looking at those thoughts and being like, I'm okay with this. Like, this is like, but knowing that I don't have to stay in those thoughts. And more importantly, those thoughts don't have to influence whatever action comes next. So if there's or if I am dwelling on something that I did in the past, and maybe I shouldn't, I'm now at a present place where, one, every action that I do from this moment forward can be a
Mm-hmm.
totally different meaning, outcome, everything like that. And then in the future, it just helps you like, okay, before you even fantasize about the future, which is great, or whether you're anxious or worried about the future, it just helps you like, all right, one, none of those things ever even happen. Right now, the reality is I'm sitting in the chair. Like and you know what I mean? But it's
Mm-hmm.
so true. Like it's so like, and we do it so often. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was talking to my mom the other day, and she was talking about, yeah, because in this happens and this and that and that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, mom, like right now you're sitting on the phone talking to me. Like nobody's even in that situation. So why are we even like,
Mm-hmm.
so that's how meditation helped me, but it is a practice, and it definitely ain't for everybody, whether it's exercising, whether it's your own thing, whether it's prayer, whether it's whatever the case. All it is just
Not for the faint at heart.
whatever
It's
it is.
yeah. If you're a busybody, you got ADHD, meditation may not be for you.
And listen, there's been times, it's like, if Adderall just didn't get such a bad name, I was like, could I imagine, like, if, like, for real estate professionals, if, like Adderall, like, we would be gold, like, we would be gold. But obviously, it's just like no one wants to have to take Adderall in order to do it. But to your point, like, we're in a very, very, very fast-paced environment to the point
Mm.
where it's weird because we're in a very, very fast-paced environment in which it takes time for deals to close.
Mm-hmm.
So, to your point, just sometimes as far as like stress relieving, it's just like we don't want to do nothing, or
Mm-hmm.
just watching TV or just relaxing, reading the book is all that we need. So, to your point on that,
Mm-hmm.
um, last and not least, Stephanie, question number 4: where can people find you at?
All right, so they can find me on Instagram at my life is real estate. So that's at my life is real estate, and on Facebook at Stephanie Madeline. Madeline is not one of my names. Don't ask. So Stephanie Madeline. And also I have a website, www.wakeupinvestments.com. Again, www.wakeupinvestments with an S.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. This was an interesting episode. And the reason why is because usually, and if you listen to any of the other episodes, by the time that I get into the end of it, I'm talking about how the speaker gave us kind of actionable steps that we can go off of,
Mm-hmm.
which you did as well. It's just that you've also tapped into more of the mindset piece.
Mm-hmm.
For individuals, whether they're just getting started and it's just about building that network,
Mm-hmm.
realizing what your strengths and weaknesses are, and
Mm-hmm.
leveraging the proper talent to do that,
Mm-hmm.
which is an interesting part, especially for wholesaling, because most people think that they have to do everything themselves as far as getting the property under contract, making the cold calls, sending out their direct mail, putting up the bandit signs, knocking on doors, whatever that case is.
Mm-hmm.
And
You don't have to do everything.
they don't. If mapping out, wholesale process, it can be easily mapped out. And like we're talking about, just taking those steps, and just what you did was absolutely brilliant, because that is your main thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm great at generating leads, or put it like this: I'm solid at generating leads. I'm solid at marketing.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing is closing deals. Like, that is it. Meaning, marketing brings the people in, and sales gets the deal done. So
Mm-hmm.
that is my main squeeze. But I do
Mm-hmm.
the other things decent, but eventually it will be hired out, because the reality is, if I even cold call an hour a day or 2 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
cool, that works.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, there are people that are cold calling 8 hours a day. That's all they do. They're not doing any social media. They're not, like, they don't go out.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, like, whatever the case. Their one thing is cold calling. So who's
Mm-hmm.
going to be more effective? I might as well pay that individual to do my cold calling, and I'd rather get a stack of leads that already been qualified, and all I got to do is put the sales portion on.
Mm-hmm.
So, to your point, mindset wise, running the business, especially under wholesaling,
Mm-hmm.
getting in mindset wise when you're starting to invest out of state, mindset when you're partnering and joint venturing,
Mm-hmm.
and just that, like I said, just a mindset thing for people, which is often missed. So you touched on that a lot. which I am thankful for. So I know the guests are definitely and listeners are definitely thankful for. So thank you for sure for taking the time out to come onto the show, to give us your insights. Because I know people, especially, um, it's hard, and you have to stay in that mind frame, and you have to stay in that synergy. And I'm hoping that's what this podcast does for individuals,
Mm-hmm.
because some people may be at a job that similar to you. Maybe they're looking for a way out, or maybe they're looking for a career transition. And the more that you stay within the energy or that synergy where you're hearing people talk about real estate, give their insight, provide value, the more you are likely to actually pull the trigger and take some action. So again, Stephanie, if you have nothing else, if there's anything else that you want to touch on, feel free to. If
Mm-hmm.
not, thank you so much, definitely, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Austin. This is amazing. So keep on doing what you're doing, the great work of being able to get across everyone's ideas, their perspectives of real estate, as well as other businesses as well. So kudos to you as well.
Yeah, one day at a time. Let's keep the grind going. I'll definitely, obviously, do the social media and various communication platforms. We'll
Mm-hmm.
stay in touch. If there's
Yes.
any opportunity, obviously, for us to do deals in the future, I am more than open to it for sure, because
Okay.
that's starting to be the mindset as I max out. I don't want to say max out, but get to a certain ceiling as far as opportunity where we currently are, and start to explore other opportunities. So expect a phone call. We'll definitely be in touch. Thank you so much again for coming on the show.
No
And
problem.
go the daily grind. Thank you so much, Stephanie.